this meeting of the Development Control Committee, which due to the government's advice to practice social distancing will be held virtually. The meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed as soon as possible following the meeting. Everyone participating in this meeting will be accessing this meeting from remote locations. Please could everyone ensure that their mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode. Members will receive an electronic copy of the agenda. I will ask officers to present a summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch off their cameras at that point. But I would also ask the members, except myself as chairperson, at all other times you keep your cameras and microphones switched off. This will help to minimize any background noise and interference to ensure that the connection remains as stable as possible. If any members wish to raise a point or question, they should press the hands up icon on the screen at the top right-hand side of the Microsoft Teams window, and I will come to you in order I receive your requests. Please lower your hand once you have finished speaking. The chat button has been disabled for this meeting. Please do not use your microphones until I invite you to do so. Officers from the Democratic Services will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout the meeting, and when necessary, will mute those not being used. Before we normally commence, I will now ask the officers from the Democratic Services to announce the names of councillors in attendance at this meeting. I do also ask the officers to introduce themselves as when I invite them to speak during the course of the meeting. They to ensure the microphones and cameras are switched off when not in use. Right. Can I ask members now for 2 minutes silence, please? For the person of the late Phil White, please.
I think you're muted, Mr. Chairman.
You're on mute, Chair. You're on mute.
I'll have to do it again. On behalf of this planning committee, we offer our sincere condolences to his family. Thank you very much. Right. Apologies for our absence, please. I got 3 here. Councillor Spanswick, Councillor Richard Collins, and the late one is Richard Grammel or Mike Kern. Councillor Watts, how are you? Right.
Yes, hello, Chair. Yes, I've got two apologies. One for Councillor Sorrell Dendy and the Caroline Webster, Councillor
Thank you
Caroline.
very much. Have we got that, Mark?
Yes, Chair, that's fine.
Thank you very much. Right.
Chair, before we go on, could you ask Mark to read out the names of the members present, please?
Yeah, I will do that now. Mark, can you give us the members, please?
Yes, thanks, Chair. I'm Mark Galvin, Interim Democratic Services Manager. Members today, we got Councillor Altaf Hussain, Councillor Keith Edwards, Councillor David Lewis, Councillor Gary Thomas as Chair, Councillor James Radcliffe, Councillor John Paul Blundell, Councillor Kenneth Watts, Councillor Matthew Voisey, Councillor Nora Clark, Councillor Richard Young, Councillor Ross Sturman. And that's it. Thanks, Chair.
Can you tell us, Mark, how many members you, please?
Give me a sec. I'll have to go back to the top of the tree. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 members, Chair. So we core it by 2.
We
Thank you
have
very much.
over, Chair, as for purposes of Tate Roderick Jones, legal advisor to the committee, we're fine to go on, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, please, for members and officers? None? Thank you. Please give a mover and a seconder, please, for the minutes of the Cabinet, September 2021, please.
Move.
Thank all in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Number 4, we got no public speakers. Right, sir. Number 5, can I move it for the addendum sheet, please?
Move, Chair.
Thank you. Second?
Yes, on behalf of all the brides who walk the footway.
Thank you very much. All in favour then? Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Item 6. Can I have a mover for development control, democratic control guidance, please?
Move.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Number 7. Broadway Camping and Touring Park, Mole Input Call. Right. This has been deferred, so I'd like to bring Johnson in now, please.
Thank you, Chair. For the purpose of the recording, my name is Jonathan Parsons. I'm the Group Manager for Planning and Development Services. Yeah, we've sought some additional information on this particular application, which is for the installation of some static caravans on an existing touring caravan site at Brodowell in Porthcawl. We felt that we needed to bring a more thorough report back to Development Control Committee in December or sometime in the future. So we felt that we didn't have sufficient information to make a determination, or for members to make the determination at this particular time. So we need to seek some further clarification from the applicant, and we'll bring a further report back in a future committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Johnson. Right, all in favour of this deferred, all the members, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Right, thank you. Right. Item 7, please, Ed. Amendments to the Development Control Committee protocols. Jonathan, you again, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Members will recall that we had a workshop session before last committee where we discussed the potential amendments to our code of practice, and this followed on from an earlier session we did prior to the pandemic and to lockdown back in 2020. The potential amendments are summarised in the attached report, but for clarity purposes, I'll sort of go through the sort of main headlines. the copy of the current code of practice is appended to the report, and that's the document that we approved back in 2017. It's proposed that we amend that document, bring it up to date, and make sure that the relevant links within that document, or the new replacement document, will be up to date and relevant and fit for purpose. Just to sort of summarise the discussion from last time in the workshop session, we looked at the threshold for when we bring planning applications before members, and at the moment, any planning application that has 2 objections or more come to planning committee for determination. Now, members felt that in the case of minor application or householder applications, then quite possibly 2 or more than 2 objections to an application are quite relevant. There could be neighbours either side or front or rear. So members felt that we would keep that threshold intact for those type of applications. However, for larger scale application, major development, that threshold be increased to 5 or more objections. There may be some flexibility in what we bring to planning committee, which is also in our current code of practice. So for example, if we feel that members should make a determination on a particular application, then, and it's in the interests, in wider interest to do so, then we can still bring things to members' attention at committee. Members also discussed the possibility of having the occasion where we have maybe more than 1 objection from the same household, and whether that should be counted as 1. And I think we agreed at this point that the emphasis should be on the weight of the objection rather than the quantity. So members agreed that in the event that we get more than 1, 2 or 3 possibly objections from the same house, that if they're essentially the same objection, that they be treated as 1. But it's quite possible that we could have a situation where you have 2 people living in the same household that have completely different views on a particular application. So we need to take that into account as well. So we also build in a bit of flexibility into those circumstances as well. As I said, the important thing is that we look at the weight of the objection, the nature of the objection. We also talked about public speaking. Bridgend has had public speaking at planning committees since 2005. We're one of the first, if not the first, authority in Wales to introduce public speaking for planning committees. And now it's now the norm. Most planning authorities in Wales will have an element of public being able to address the committee. And I think members agreed that it works reasonably well. It was suggested that we increase the time for public speaking from 3 minutes to 5 minutes. And also we'd give the opportunity that where there's more than 1 objector, say there's 2 objectors, that they can have 2.5 minutes each to make any representations. But of course, that 5-minute speaking would also apply to the applicant or the applicant's agent as well, in the interests of fairness. Another aspect that was discussed is whether it would be possible to ask technical or fact-finding questions of an applicant or an agent if they are in attendance at the committee meeting. And again, that was something that members felt that should be put into our code of practice. It's not currently in there at the moment, and when we have done that in the past, members have found it quite useful, and it is entirely at the discretion of the chair. We've also looked at the issue of speaking twice. So, for example, in the situation where an application is deferred following debate, then whether a member of the public be allowed to speak a second time if that application comes back to committee. And in this case, members agreed that shouldn't necessarily automatically follow. However, if there is new evidence or new information or circumstances have changed, then of course we would allow public speaking at the second time that application is heard. So that's going to be built into any new code of practice. Members are also keen that in the absence of any public speakers, that it's the developer or the applicant, the agent, would continue the case where they would not be allowed to speak. So if there's no objections and no public speakers, then the applicant wouldn't be able to be represented in committee. We also looked at late representations, and members agreed it was not acceptable to have late representations that try to sway the committee in any particular direction, and we've suggested a deadline of end of business for the Tuesday before planning committee for any representations to come forward. Obviously, there's going to be circumstances where the information that comes in last minute is going to be highly relevant to that particular decision and highly material, and in which case then it is in members' interests to be made aware of that. Similarly, we also talked about the situation, and social media as a part to play in this as well, where members are directly contacted either by objectors or by developers promoting their schemes or objecting to schemes on the day of committee, and that's again, if it's not relevant or material to that particular decision, and if it's already been covered in the report, then that's not something that we should be bringing back to committee. In that case, members can just pass on any information to officers, and we will assess that and ensure that it is filed and anything relevant is brought forward. Looking at site visits, we did discuss site visits, and members are quite keen to continue with site visits, and I think overall that's good to know. I think site visits are very relevant. Unfortunately, during the last 18 months, we haven't had the opportunity due to restrictions to visit sites, and we have put some alternatives in place. But as been pointed out by members, then I think there's no substitute for actually seeing, listening to, and I think one member also mentioned smelling sites as well. So I think we were in agreement that site visits continue. However, it was discussed that there was little scope for continuing with the site visit panels. As if members be aware, in Bridgend we have two types of site visit: full committee site visits, and we have a site visit panel which comprises of the chair, vice chair, third member, and local member. It was felt that it wasn't worth continuing with the site visit panel procedure. However, we are still in a period of restrictions, and although not as hard as the lockdown restrictions were earlier this year, we are still in a period of restriction, and that would affect how we do site visits. And if you members will recall that about a year ago, we brought a report to Planning Committee, Development Control Committee, about temporarily amending our protocols to allow a smaller site visit, an emergency site visit protocol, where it's a reduced number of members and officers, and we would seek then volunteers from the committee to attend those visits, but it'd be a much smaller visit. We couldn't do the social distancing if all members of Development Control Committee turned up, so we brought in this emergency protocol, but we've never had the opportunity to use it, because as soon as we brought it in, we were back into a tight lockdown. So I think it's worth reviving that, certainly for another 12-month period, or until restrictions are lifted, whichever is the sooner. So that's part of the recommendation as well, Chair. We will then look to, if members are agreeable to these amendments, then we will look to produce a revised code of practice document, that would be brought back to members, and then we can adopt that going forward. But as I said earlier, this is a document we've had since 2017. We are committed to reviewing that, and as members of the Development Control Committee, it is useful to have your feedback on that and make sure that we are continuing in the right direction. That's all I need to say on this, Chair. That the recommendations are set out in the report. If members are agreeable, then we can take that forward, amend the scheme of delegation, and produce a new document in due course. Happy to take any questions on that, Chair.
Right, thank you. Could I have a move on the second, please?
Move.
Thank you very much. Councillor Clark, please.
Thanks, Chair. Obviously, I understand that the changes are going to be put into a reviewed code of practice. I just wanted to ask a question on the code of practice, if I may, because obviously a lot of the what's in there will stay. And if I can ask a question on page 59 at C, if I can find it myself. Are you there, Jonathan?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm
right.
there. Yes. Yeah.
There it says about local members requesting a consideration by the Development Control Committee, and that as members we need to notify the corporate director communities in writing within 21 days. I mean, I've never ever done that. I've never written to the director of communities. I just reply to the planning application. So, and normally obviously the officer that's dealing with the planning application. So I was just wondering whether, because it's in there, is that set in stone or not?
Yeah, I think when we say the corporate director of communities, it's that function is delegated down to myself and to our officers. So when you reply to the case officer, you are by default also replying to the corporate director. So I'm not quite sure why that reference was in there, but I think it's because the corporate director is ultimately responsible for the service. But yes, it's just the quirk of the wording. There's no need to directly write to the corporate director. We can still do that as you would with any other plan application, and by responding to myself or the case officer, you are actually by default also responding to the corporate director, because it goes out in the corporate director's name.
Okay.
So it's just a bit of a quirk of the wording.
Yeah, as long as I'm not doing the wrong thing.
No.
Right, Councillor Clark.
Yes, that's fine, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you very much. All right, no more questions. I got no more questions. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair.
All right. Item 9, the annual monitoring report for the Bajan Local Development Plan. I got two officers here, Gareth Tennant, Strategic Plan and Policy Team Leader, and Adam Povers, Principal Strategic Plan Officer, to present the report, please. When you're ready, both of you, or one at a time?
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, members. Whilst you're all aware that preparation of the replacement LDP is well underway, we still have a statutory duty to monitor the existing plan and to prepare an annual monitoring report. The aim of this is to assess how far the strategy and the policies are being achieved, and the main themes are summarised in the committee report for ease of reference. There has been one notable change this year. TAN 1 has been revoked, and the 5-year housing land supply approach to monitoring housing delivery has been replaced with a housing trajectory. This mechanism compares what actually has been built to what was anticipated, and I would draw members' attention to the graph on page 55 of Appendix 1, which illustrates housing delivery over the whole existing plan period. 2 new monitoring indicators have been introduced alongside the trajectory. The first is the annual level of housing completions compared to the anticipated annual requirement. In 2021, completions were 300 dwellings below what was anticipated. The second indicator is the running total, the number of cumulative housing completions compared to what was anticipated. And cumulative dwelling completions have been nearly 3,000 dwellings short of what was expected when the plan was adopted. What these two new indicators show is that there's even more of a pressing need to review the existing plan than there was back in 2018. Completions are failing to keep pace with the housing requirement. This is because several of the extant brownfield allocations have not come forward as anticipated, and the number of remaining deliverable sites is naturally dwindling at the end of the plan period. And this also needs to be considered in relation to local demographics. People will continue to have children, students will continue to graduate, new households will continue to form, and some existing family units will continue to break down. All of these housing supply pressures will not pause for housing delivery to catch up. And the key means of addressing this issue is to ensure the replacement plan contains sufficient deliverable sites. Otherwise, the gap between housing delivery and the housing requirement will continue to widen and more housing sites will be needed. This is also the most effective means of combating ad hoc development coming forward outside of the planned strategy and to prevent planning by appeal. It is therefore not only fundamental that we continue progressing with the statutory review of the LDP, but also that we include sufficient deliverable sites within the final version of the plan to satisfy the county borough's housing requirements. And the findings of this latest monitoring report only further served to evidence that point. And finally, whilst I don't want to stray too far from the agenda item itself, we did receive over 1,200 representations on the deposit plan consultation. We are very keen to ensure each and every representation is properly considered and responded to. Due to the scale of those representations, a replacement delivery agreement is being prepared and will be shortly presented to Council. And whilst this isn't strictly the agenda item today, I just wanted to give members a quick update for reference. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Adam. Gareth, please.
I've got nothing further to add to that, Chair, unless members have any particular questions.
Any questions, please, members? No more got no questions? Can I have a movement and a second for the report, please?
It's for noting, Chair, the report. So
Put a note to the report, please, members.
Move.
Thank you very much.
Move.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Gareth.
Thank you, Chair.
Right. Item 10, please, training log. Johnson, please.
Thank you, Chair. No training this month, but for December we do have a Christmas treat, and that's the training session on the updated planning policy, national planning policy on flooding and coastal erosion. This is TAN 15, and some members may have heard about this in news headlines over the last couple of weeks. The document is due to come into, or the policy is due to come into effect on the 1st of December, and that may have implications for how we determine planning applications, how we assess planning applications, and what information we need to make those decisions. So it's quite an important piece of policy. There's also with the policy, there's also the Welsh flood maps, and they are part of TAN 15, which they are accessible online. And you can view the flood map for your particular areas. It's quite an important policy. It does have some implications for determination of applications, and we felt that it was important that members are aware of that. So we'll have that session in December. Then into the new year we'll have other sessions again as per the programme set out in the report. We've got minerals. We have some training sessions on trees, private open spaces, amenity spaces during residential developments, and also key is key training centre and beyond public rights of way and bridle ways, not bridle paths, as indicated in the report. And again, always open to suggestions of what relevant topics that members would like to cover. But we've got quite a few hard, heavy topics ahead of us, and hopefully we can provide members with the sufficient knowledge and skills to make accurate and reasonable decisions at Development Control Committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any questions, please? Can you note the report, please?
No.
Thank you very much. Right. I've got no urgent business and I can't believe it. Thank you very much, all. You take care and look after yourselves.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Gary.
Chair.
Thank you,
Bye,
Chair.
everyone.
Be short.